Hello guys, in this video you will learn how to build the corrosion shotgun, which is the one that deals power surge damage. So let's get into it. So to start off, let's take a look at the shotgun stats itself. So the first line, 70% chance to trigger power surge with a hit, but will not inflict power surge status. Pretty much what this means is that for power surge right here in the descriptions, you've got the status damage of power surge, and then you've got the debuff power surge status, right? So what this means is that you've got 70% chance to deal the damage part. However, this shotgun will never inflict the minus 40 accuracy from the power surge status. And then to move on to the next one, power surge can deal crit hit, power surge crit rate plus 15%. This is pretty much just this is a massive buff to your power surge. And it also just by default adds 15% crit rate to your status damage, well, the elemental damage, which is shock. And the next one is when power surge is triggered, power surge crit damage plus 15% for 6 seconds. Effect can stack up to 10 times. So this is pretty much just a stacking crit damage buff that's really nice, that stacks up to 10 times. And the cool thing about that is every time I trigger power surge, right, I'm gonna get it. Now I can't trigger it for some reason, right? If I trigger it, as you can see, on top of my stamina circle, the buff duration is at 3 now. So stack it to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the cool thing about that is, say I empty my mag. It gives me enough time to still shoot again after I empty the mag and actually reset the duration of the buff, which allows me to keep 100% uptime on the crit damage buff. And now if you take a look at the calibration attributes that you want on the corrosion, for the main effect, you do always want rapid shot style, because the 25% fire rate is what allows you to reach the highest DPS. And for your substats, pretty much you can go crit damage and crit rate or double crit rate. And the reason for that, you go double crit rate if you don't run a crossbow like this. Well, if you don't run crossbow, basically you're never going to hit 100% crit rate, right? Currently, you will never reach 100%. You have the gas mask hood that gives you 35% crit rate. You have a crit boost that can give you 15%. I currently have crit amp on my gloves. And you can have like 2% of crit rate from or actually 9% if you have the crit rate enhancement mod, blue mod for your top. And you can get 5% from your lone wolf and another 8% from your fourth piece bonus. And that's not enough for you to reach to overcap 100%, right? So you'd run double crit rate if you don't want to run the crossbow. However, if you do run the crossbow, you can definitely consider double crit damage or crit damage crit rate. And the reason for that is you always want to pretty much have a 1-to-2 ratio for your crit rate to crit damage, right? And the maximum crit rate that you want to have is 100, so that once you reach 100, you're gonna crit every single time, no matter what. Although in this game, there's more leeway for that, since once you reach approximately 80% crit rate or above 80, you're gonna notice that every single bullet is critting anyway, so it's not that important, right? But pretty much, you want to keep a 1-to-2 ratio, and that 1-to-2 ratio will definitely be already filled, because I'll dive into this much later, but for now I'm just going to say that you're going to get crit damage from every single substat from your mods, right? And you're going to get 45% crit rate from Deadshot. You're going to get already 48% crit damage. Did I say crit rate from Deadshot? My apologies. You're going to get 45% crit damage from Deadshot, and you're going to get 48% crit damage from your lone wolf, right? And you also have the 150% crit damage buff for your power surge on your shot. So it's just crit damage adds up really easily, right? So you want to at least build the most amount of crit rate possible. And then moving on to the accessories. Currently, what I'm running is a fully accuracy accessory, because it's a shot. The shotgun spread is pretty big if you start to have some distance with your opponents. So I want the most amount of accuracy. Stability is fine. 30 is fine. I think the recoil is pretty easy to control. So I'm running extended break, the tactical laser sight, just the base drum that the game gives you, and for ammo, well, you'd want to use the best ammo that you can actually sustain, so you can like have a good source from it. So here, if I show the full stats, at 100 accuracy, I get a 0.497 of fire spread, right? And if I say I remove this, I lose pretty much a bit more than 33%, which is pretty huge just for one single attachment. So this is why I actually run 100 accuracy on it. So this is pretty much all there is for the attachments. So this is pretty much all what there is for the attachments. Moving on to the gear, to your gear sets, you'd want to run 4-piece Lone Wolf for the max amount of stacking crit damage buff, and for the conditional crit rate that you can get. The reason for that is because your status damage on the shotgun scales off of crit, and your normal bullet damage scales off of crit. So this is actually huge. Crit damage is the main essence of this build. You want to focus on getting crit as much as you can. And for the key gear, you'll almost pretty much run gas mask hood every time. The only moment you wouldn't run that is when you can't afford it, right? And currently I'm running the 2-piece shelter set, and that's because I don't have the star crown to get the 4th lone wolf yet, the 4-piece lone wolf yet. So I'm running this. But say you have 4-piece lone wolf, you have the gas mask. For the last set, you'd want something from a set that gives you a buff. So for instance, if we go take a look, you can definitely use the Renegade set, which gives you 15% reload speed. Otherwise, you can always opt for the Bastille set, which is conditional 10% weapon damage. It really just depends on what you prefer, pretty much. Let's just talk real quick about your key gear, right? So you actually have two options. You've got the gas mask hood for 8000 star chrom, and you've got the Mayfly goggles. Now, gas is generally better for everything. PSI makes a big difference for shock damage, and the 35% crit rate for coming from the gas mask buff is just insane, right? If you want to min-max your damage, just maximize your damage, right? It's really the crit build that you're going to go for. And I've also tried a lot of combinations with the goggles. So for instance, since goggle triggers power surge and extra time, as you can see, power surge trigger count +1. Well, you might have thought to pair it with Thunderclap, which is, I believe it's the mod on the mask right here. Thunderclap, so after triggering power surge 20 times, the next hit summons celestial thunder, shock damage of 200% PSI intensity, right? However, the shotty just doesn't shoot fast enough, even with a rapid shot and momentum up. So even then, everything was tested with similar stats to the other variants of mods that I had, and it just wasn't able to keep up. So pretty much, gas masks is what you're always gonna aim for. However, if you don't have gas masks, don't feel too bad if you have the Mayfly goggles. It does fall behind, but not by a large margin, right? Now let's move on to the mods. So for the mask, you have two choices, right? You can choose between Fateful Strike or Deviation Expert. Just a quick side note before you choose on any mods, right? You have two priorities. Your first priority is to get, from all the mods that I'm going to talk about, you get one of them, you choose one of them that has the best substat rolls, because in this game, substats dominate. They actually dominate more than your core effect, right? If, say, I had, I don't have an example here, but say if Fateful Strike Violent had not a single roll into crit damage, right? And almost everything went into max HP and the weapon damage, the mod would be nowhere as good as if it rolled right now, right? As a matter of fact, it's not even maxed out yet, because just for sake of testing between Deviation Expert that I want, the Deviation Expert that I have, and this one, right? So I've tested both. Fateful Strike actually has better stats because it has 9% crit damage against normal enemies, which helps you when you damage the dummy, and it also has weapon damage. And Fatal Strike actually deals less damage. I tried it with both masks, with both helmets. I'm sorry. So with the gas mask and with the Mayfly goggles, and Deviation Expert here still came on top, even with less actual effective stat. Now you may notice I actually have 7.2% magazine capacity. I did keep that in mind. I didn't shoot more bullets with Deviation Expert than with Fatal Strike. Deviation Expert just performs better. However, here, if I were to actually +5 my Fatal Strike, there's a good chance that it's gonna start performing better, just because of the better effective stats on it. So really, just choose between these two, and choose the one that has the best substats on it. Now, next to the mask, you still have two choices, but realistically, there's only one that you're going to pick, and it's going to be First Electrocution, because if you read the core effect, it's literally made for that shotgun. For enemies without Power Surge status, Power Surge ultimate damage plus 30%. And your other choice is Thunderclap. Now, what Thunderclap does, I've already said it like just a little before in the video. After triggering Power Surge 20 times, the next hit summons Terrestrial Thunder. It's 200% PSI intensity of shock damage. The reason why this is bad is because the shotty shoots too slowly. Even if you have the Mayfly goggles, which adds trigger count and momentum up, it still isn't able to keep up, right? And all that effort, all that tweaking your other mods just for one single instance of 200% PSI intensity per like 1.5 mags, which is absolute dog water compared to First Electrocution, which gives you another 30% multiplier on all of your shock multipliers, and that applies for every single shock instance that you deal, which is why this is just straight up the better option. And then next to the gloves. So for your gloves, crit amp over crit boost. However, once again, if you have better mods on crit boost, take crit boosts. But here, I have better mods on crit amp, and also, just the fact that the reason why crit amp is better than crit boost is because of its crit value. So how do you calculate crit value is you double your crit rate and then you add the crit damage to it. So here we actually have 20% crit value with the crit rate, and add in the 15% of your crit damage, your crit value is at 35. Compared to this, where if you double the crit rate, you're at 30% crit value, which is 5% less than what crit amp offers. For your shoes, it's very easy. You have one single option, and that option is going to be covered events, right? Because taking no damage within 4 seconds grants 20% melee weapon and status damage for 30 seconds, and the effect resets when the duration ends. This is pretty much a 99% unconditional buff, because the buff, once you get it, since it lasts for so long, you're pretty much always going to have it, and the downtime is so short. You got 4 seconds of downtime. Literally just don't get hit for 4 seconds, and you're going to get the buff. So yeah, covered advance, just the best one. It buffs your weapon, which is your weapon damage, which is a buff to your normal bullets, and status damage, which is a buff for your static shock damage. For your top, really top, you can't take anything. You can't take anything between like flame resonance, right? Actually, even I haven't texted weak spot damage boost, but pretty much everything here, you can swap them. You can try them, because really here what matters is your substats, because you're not going to be using the legendary mods, because since they're all defensive mods, right? You're going to be using the blue mods, and they give so little substats that really the better ones that you get, they actually matter even more. Which is why here, even though the entire build focuses on crit damage, I actually go weapon damage here, just because of its superior stats, right? 6% damage against normal enemies and 3.6 weapon damage. While here, sure, I do get 2% crit rate and 12% crit damage, and 6% crit damage here, right? And damage against elite enemies. However, it's already maxed. Both are maxed, and this one has green and gray rarity buffs, while the other one has 2 blue rarity. So this is why I actually equipped it, but this is why munitions amplifier here for me it's better. If you have, it's really just whichever substat is better, just take them. Now for your pants, it's very easy. You could think between Deadshot Violent and the one Bullet Siphon. Bullet Siphon is pretty much with every 5 bullets that you shoot out, you gain a 4% weapon damage buff, and it maxes out at 20%. While Deadshot Violent, it's every single crit hit that you deal will stack crit damage, 5% of crit damage until 45%. And I'm sure it's pretty easy to see why this is pretty fucking strong compared to Bullet Siphon. However, if you actually like don't have rapid fire, right? Rapid shot on your shotgun as for the calibration, and you have a lot of max size mods, and you have a lot of magazine capacity buffs, you could make Bullet Siphon work. However, you know, it's gonna deal less damage than Deadshot Violent for sure. So Deadshot Violent is pretty much the option, the way to go for this, for the pants. Now for the shotgun mod, what you want to run is pretty much, it's gonna be between Shock Rampage and Static Shot. The other options are dog water, right? There's this mod, I don't think I have it, but it's pretty much you transfer shock status, or you transfer the shock status to another enemy, or something like that. It's just straight up bad. It doesn't give any DPS increase whatsoever. And here there's this one, Surge Amplifier, which when dealing power surge damage grants stacking power surge damage for 3 seconds of 5% up to 4 stacks. And I'm pretty sure if you it's easy to understand why it's just worse than Static Shock, because this one you actually have to stack it up, and this is just straight up, it directly gives it to you. Why? Because your shotgun, this shotgun, the corrosion one, does not apply surge status, which means the buff it's just already permanent anyway. And I'm pretty sure that it's pretty easy to see why Static Shock is just straight up better than Surge Amplifier. And that's because Surge Amplifier, you have to stack the buff, while Static Shock just straight up gives it to you, the 20% for free. And now, if you want to choose between Shock Rampage or Static Shock, once again here, it's the better substats win. However, if you have equal substats, Shock Rampage is gonna end up doing more damage, because just more trigger chance is pretty OP, right? Do note that it's based on weapons trigger chance, and it stacks up 4 times, so it's 20% off of your weapon trigger chance, which is 70% here. So it's 0.2 times 0.7, and we do that plus 0.7, which ends up as being 84% chance to trigger power surge. And so with that, that's pretty much it for the mods. If you have questions about mod combinations that I haven't talked about, please leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. If you've enjoyed this video till now, feel free to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Or anyway, if you have any questions about possible mods that you might want to run, you could also ask them in the comment. I'll be happy to answer. And now to move on to Cradles. It's pretty straightforward. This is not needed. I just run this because I use automatic weapons, right? So we're just going to remove this for now. You want handgun enhancement for the 20% damage boost to shotguns. This is also not necessarily needed. But this, however, you can run it if you're fighting against the great ones, and you actually just use tactile items like the daggers one, the throwing daggers, for instance. Deviation Master is a must. So if we do the must ones first, this is a must. Deviation Master is the must. Tactical Combo is the must, because 25% weapon damage after reloading or switching weapons, that's just pretty insane. You can literally just do a quick swap right here. Oh, and as you can see, I already have the buff. So that's pretty good. Status Enhancement is a must again, because your shotgun also scales off of status damage since it deals shock damage. And these two are also must-haves. So after reloading, your power surge damage is increased by 25% for 4 seconds. And Transient Impact, which is after triggering power surge damage plus 25%. So it's just, these ones that I've just talked about are your mandatory ones. And for the rest, right, since since you're still gonna have 2 slots left, you have the choice between, as I've said, the Master Tactician, and you have 2 other choices. So the first one would be Steady Hand, which is while in Fortress Warfare or Fast Gunner status, weak spot damage plus 40% and weak spot damage to the bullseye plus 20%. This is good if you have a gun that gives you Fortress Warfare for a bit of time and you actually just switch out to your shotgun. You're actually gonna benefit from this. And even if they hit someone with the bullseye, right? If they mark someone with the bullseye effect, you also benefit from it. And Bounty Hunter is a conditional buff as well, which pretty much you should run this if you run the crossbow and you actually use the crossbow, because after defeating a unit you marked, weapon damage plus 25% and your weak spot damage is plus 35%, lasting for 15 seconds, which is pretty long for a buff. So those are pretty much your Cradle choices. If this video helped you in any way, please don't hesitate to like the video and subscribe to my channel for more Once Human content. See ya!